Hi everyone! So this is going to be part one of a two-part transfer series. We're going to need two images of your choosing. I'm going to work with Janice Joplin over here, and I'm going to show you two different ways that we can transfer an image. So you're going to need a little bit of Mod Podge, some water, a paintbrush, some colored pencils, and some acrylic paint. And here we go. So I have two different images of Janice here. I'm going to use the larger one to transfer with Mod Podge. So my first layer of the Mod Podge is going to be relatively thinned out with water, and I'm going to grab either charcoal or graphite and coat the back of my second picture with whichever material I decide. For this one, I think I'm going to work with charcoal, so I coated the back of the image pretty liberally with a bunch of the charcoal. And now I taped the top of the image to the sketchbook page I'm working with, and I'm using a colored pencil to draw the outline of the image. I like to use a red, orange, or yellow colored pencil, especially if I'm working with black and white images, because I can see clearly the parts of the photo that I've already outlined, and that sort of helps me while I'm transferring the image. So another trick that I have for this is when the pencil dulls, try to do the broader outlines and keep a pretty sharp tip for the finer details like on the face and hands. And I noticed that my Mod Podge image was dry, so I went ahead and did a second coat over there. For the second and third coat of Mod Podge, you can be pretty generous with the Mod Podge itself. It doesn't need to be as thinned out as the first layer. So I'm going to go ahead and finish tracing out all of the details I want to include on my transfer. And when I'm done, I'm going to lift it up and see how it looks. And it looks pretty great. It transferred evenly, and I think it's because I coated the back of the page very generously with the charcoal. So now while the Mod Podge layer is drying, I'm going to go ahead and spruce up this transfer with some colored pencils and color Janice in a little bit. Now that I'm happy with the way Janice looks colored in, I decided I want to add some kind of funky swirls and dots in the background. This background has a lot of color on it already, so it's kind of fun to add some lighter values on top of the darker red and green. And I'm going to do my final coat of Mod Podge on this second image. I'm going to let that dry for a little while. I might come back later and add one extra coat. 3 or 4 is typically good, but if you want to add 5 just to make it extra robust, that wouldn't hurt either. So when we're done with today, we're going to let that dry until next week's video, so make sure you keep it handy. And I'm going to go ahead and prep the second page for when I do transfer the Mod Podge image over. I think it'll be nice if I have a sort of translucent white background. So I'm going to do this rectangle in colored pencil, and then I'm going to add a light wash of white on top. I want to make sure that it stays translucent because I want the red and green that's already on the page to show through. And since I have some extra paint on my palette, I figure why not spruce up the other transfer. I'm going to add the same sort of washed out white where the work that I just did with colored pencil will still show through. I'm just sort of adding a little wash on top to make the colors pop but not oversaturate it with the opacity that paint can do. So I have a liner brush over here, and I'm going to use that for the details in her hands and her shoe and her face. And I want to apply the same technique of making it kind of translucent with areas that have a little bit more opacity, like the highlight on her necklace and sunglasses. I want those parts to be a little bit more dense with the paint. And now that I like the way that looks, it seems like the swirls I did on the background could benefit from a little touch of paint too. So keeping with the theme that I've been using with the paint, I'm going to go ahead and make this more of a wash. I really want to show the strokes of the colored pencil underneath. I think that gives it a kind of cool texture. So just be loose and have fun. You can use Janice as an image if you'd like, or you can use another image. It's just nice to know that if you're struggling with drawing, you can still transfer a very realistic image using these techniques. Well, thanks for joining me, and tune in next week so we can finish transferring our second image over. Here's a little shot of Janice hanging out on the sketchbook, and I'd love to see in the comments below some of the work that you've created. Don't forget to subscribe and like to the video, and thanks for tuning in.